Hello, my friends. Welcome to SJ Weekly number 8.
Number 8?
For the 12th of August, 2018. And as you can see, I've started on my desktop. Well, I've done that for a reason, and that reason is I've been very public that the next video I'm making is on Alex Jones, and I have the script right there along with my social media research folder. However, these 6 other scripts are all in various stages of completion, so I figured we'll do a quick impromptu vote on which one you want to see next. We've got a script on cultural appropriation, a script on journalists are not a protected class, a script on forced civility, a script on Anthony Birch, a script on the origin of Islamophobia, and a script on Boogie 2988. So here's what we'll do. The first person to comment that they want one of these 6 scripts, I will super like that comment and only that comment. So hopefully those 6 comments will rise to the top, and then all you have to do is simply thumbs up the topic that you want to see next. And after the Alex Jones video is done, and presuming that nothing major happens in that time, the next video I do will be one of these 6, based on your votes. And I actually got a lot of positive feedback last week from my coffee drinking during that episode. So here guys, just take a listen. This time, I'm drinking regular coffee, but instead of milk or cream, I'm using chocolate milk in the coffee, and it's actually pretty fucking incredible. But let's get to today's social justice nonsense. Here we have Professor Slam's hegemonic masculinity of homeless men. I mean, look at this guy. Isn't he just the spitting image of white male privilege? A feminist professor at Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada recently published a book chapter documenting the myriad ways homeless men allegedly perpetuate hegemonic masculinity while discussing their hardships. Of course this would come from fucking Wilfrid Laurier. For those of you who don't know, that was the school that raked Lindsay Shepherd over the coals for playing in a neutral manner, not even agreeing with him, a video of Jordan Peterson to her students. The book chapter, When a Man's Home is Not a Castle, Hegemonic Masculinity Among Men Experiencing Homelessness, was published last Wednesday by Professor Erin Dej in a book she co-edited on patriarchy in psychiatric wards and homeless shelters. I guess the fruit was just way too low-hanging to go after people like Harvey Weinstein or anybody else in the top, because if you wanted an example of hegemonic masculinity and of white patriarchy, I mean, you could just go there. You can go to Hollywood. You can go to any kind of upper echelons of any society, and you'll probably find some kind of example of that. No, she had to go for the homeless men. Because even if you're homeless, if you have a penis, you're oppressive. The goal of her research, she explains, was to assess the ways hypermasculinity is performed among men experiencing homelessness. And to do this, she interviewed 27 homeless men and spent an additional 296 hours spying on them in homeless shelters. While research on vulnerable people typically requires informed consent and approval by an ethics board, it is unclear if Dej sought this. Imagine my shock. She declined to comment on this when emailed by PJ Media, and her research makes no mention of ethics review. Of course it doesn't, because these people don't care about ethics. To them, ethics is kind of a roadblock. It's something that's in the way. You know, it's maybe, you know what? Maybe ethics is part of the white patriarchy. You know, if it's holding a female professor down, it has to be part of the white patriarchy. So maybe ethical standards is just doublespeak for men trying to do her transformative research or whatever the fuck she's gonna call it. During interviews with homeless men, Dej claims she learned that many aspire to hegemonic masculinity, which she defines as the type of masculinity that serves to fortify the dominance of men and ultimately subordinate women. Do you mean maybe that they aspire to not be homeless, or hold down a job, or own a car or a house, or have a girlfriend or a wife or kids? Maybe being homeless has made them desire a generic, unremarkable white picket fence life because that is just so much better than living on the fucking streets. I wonder if this person would go so far as to say that just general desires to get a girlfriend by like the non-violent incels would be hegemonic masculinity. Like if you're a lonely guy and you're like, man, I wish I could have a girlfriend. I wish I had somebody to love and cherish and share my life with. But I've just been completely unlucky in love. That's hegemonic masculinity. I bet that's how she thinks. However, she finds that it's difficult for homeless men to achieve this. Without the trappings of a successful life, such as a home or a career, many men instead develop what Dej refers to as compensatory masculinity to cope with their failed status. This type of masculinity is worse than hegemonic masculinity, though not yet as bad as toxic masculinity, and it involves men emphasizing whatever hyper-masculine traits they can within their stratified social status, to the detriment, allegedly, of women. This is what I said a few videos back in the Starbucks and belligerence of black subculture video. In that one, I talked about how, in the absence of money or social status or job or ability to get ahead or property or anything like that, men will often resort to brute force as a way to create a social status. And 9 times out of 10, the reason that happens is because of perpetual fatherlessness. And just so we're clear, who is it that constantly talks about the breakup of the nuclear family? That would be radical feminists. Throughout her paper, as she writes up her research findings, Dej ridicules these men for everything from reinforcing gender stereotypes, to refusing to show emotion, to talking about how their ex-wives stole money from them. This person sounds like a heartless sociopath at this point. I have a feeling that feminist academia at this point is just pumping out constantly these heartless sociopaths who see homeless men who are quite literally at the bottom of the social strata, and just shit on them, just because they can. For example, Julian, a homeless 45-year-old man with severe anxiety, was accused by Dej of perpetuating stereotypes when he confessed that "I'm ashamed that I have problems. Like, guys in our society are not supposed to have problems." Oh look, it's actually Dej playing her part in perpetuating this toxic masculinity that she rails against, because I assume she was sitting there with a fucking white male tears mug sipping on it as she was listening to this guy's story. Dej also interviewed Ron, a 41-year-old homeless man with depression and PTSD. Ron used various drugs to cope with his mental health issues, and by age 41, this had taken a heavy toll on him, causing breathing problems and muscle weakness. "I walked down the street, and like a little girl could have killed me. That's how weak I was," Ron told Dej during an interview. Extrapolating from this comment, Dej then suggested that Ron somehow views women en masse negatively. That is the height of conceit, that you're going to take this guy's, terrible life story and turn it around to be something about yourself. For Ron, the feminine subjectively acts as the ultimate exemplar of physical weakness and the most absurd hyperbole of who constitutes a threat, Dej wrote in her essay. She opines, "He has failed to live up to the basic tenets of hegemonic masculinity." This is ridiculous. If someone has a copy of this book or this chapter, please send it to me. I want to actually read this and tear it a new fucking asshole, because I have a feeling that it's all just going to be complete fucking drivel. Not surprisingly, Dej writes that the only alternative for these men is to become more emotional, insofar as men should comfort, display, and work through their emotions, adding to the complexity of what it means to be masculine. But even men who are open about their emotions are problematic. If a man opens up about his emotions, Dej laments that it still allows masculinity to prevail without necessarily challenging the patriarchal foundation upon which it rests. Catch-22. So basically, there's no winning. All men are toxic and evil, especially homeless men, and this person is a complete fucking moral leper. Oh, and she's also been awarded at least $185,000 by the Canadian government to research this shit. This is fucking ridiculous. But let's keep going down the rabbit hole of ridiculousness with new research shows a vast majority of cis people won't date trans people. A recent study attempts to quantify the extent of trans discrimination when it comes to romantic and sexual relationships. See, when I was younger, I was always told to just say no if you didn't like the way someone was coming on to you, but I guess nowadays, your sexual preferences are considered discriminatory. Considering the discrimination that trans people face on a daily basis, it comes as no surprise that trans people are overlooked when it comes to dating. 2 Canadian researchers recently asked almost 1,000 cisgender folks if they would date a trans person in a new study. Holy shit, this article's actually written like an SJW who's tweeting. 958 participants, all but 7 cisgender, ranging in age from 18 to 81, were asked to indicate which genders they would consider dating. The options included cisgender man, cisgender woman, trans man, trans woman, or genderqueer, and participants could select as many genders as they wanted. Only 12% of all participants selected trans woman and or trans man. That is normal, isn't it? I mean, what is the percentage of society that is actually gay? Isn't it around like 8% or 12% or something like that? That actually seems in line. You are not going to turn a society 100% bisexual. It is never going to be much higher than that. Those who would consider dating a trans person didn't differ in race or ethnicity, but were somewhat older, more likely to hold a university degree, and unsurprisingly, less likely to be religious than those who would not date a trans person. But some of the most striking differences were in regards to participants' gender and sexual orientation. Virtually all heterosexuals excluded trans folks from their dating pool. That is, in fact, the definition of heterosexual. Only 1.8 of straight women and 3.3 of straight men chose a trans person of either binary gender. But most non-heterosexuals weren't down for dating a trans person either, with only 11.5% of gay men and 29% of lesbians being trans-inclusive in their dating preferences. Well, that's because, one, I forget the exact terminology. Blair White used it. It was a long psychological term. But attraction to a trans person is its own sexuality outside of gay, straight, or bi. Secondly, and this is the more ridiculous explanation, if you actually believe in there being more than two genders, well then, if straight people are only attracted to a specific gender and gay people are only attracted to a specific gender, well, if trans people are a different third gender or an eighth gender or a 1200th gender, gay or straight wouldn't encompass that. Bisexual, queer, and non-binary participants, they were all combined into one group, were most open to having a trans partner, but even among them, almost half did not select either trans man or trans woman. I can only assume that those three groups were all combined into one group because there aren't really that many of them, even in a pool of 1,000 people. This is the kind of minority we're talking about here. And when SJWs want to bend a society, this is Canada, a society of 36 million people, to what statistically rounds out to be what, like a couple thousand? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Romantic relationships are one of the most important sources of social support for adults. The fact that most cis people would not consider trans people as potential dating partners is yet another serious risk factor for increased psychological and physical health problems among the trans population. Well, while that's true, and while that sucks, the ability for cis people, and really all people, to date who they want to date, and to be attracted to who they want to be attracted to, trumps any of that. You're not going to go to a cis person at gunpoint and say you must date this trans person for the good of the trans person. It's not going to happen. The high rates of trans exclusion from potential dating pools are undoubtedly due in part to cis-normativity, cis-sexism, and transphobia. How about it's because you don't find them attractive, and that's not transphobia? You can still, not be a transphobe and still be like, yeah, but I don't find you attractive. Does it work with gay people too? Like, if you're straight and a gay person hits on you and you're like, listen, I have nothing against gay people, but I'm just not interested, does that make you a homophobe? It's also possible that at least some of the trans exclusion is due to the fact that for some people, sexual orientation might be not just about a partner's gender identity, but attraction to specific body types and or judgment of reproductive capabilities. This is where the whole feminine bee-ness comes in, isn't it? These results clearly indicate that although the visibility of transgender people is on the rise, we still have a long way to go to reach trans equality. Trans equality means rights. That's what it means. It does not mean that everyone needs to be attracted to you. It does not mean that everyone's going to like you. It means rights. It means legal rights. It means human rights. It does not mean that you walk down the street and everyone thinks that you're a fucking bombshell. That's not how the world works, and it's never going to get there. And in fact, let's watch some of these oppressions clash against one another. Transgender model called Muslim airport worker terrorist in 2-hour meltdown after she misheard ma'am for man. So guys, who's more oppressed? Who's more oppressed and who's more oppressive? Is it the transgender model who called a Muslim a terrorist, or the Muslim airport worker who could have called a transgender model a man? I mean, I know that he said ma'am, but let's just say for the sake of argument, which one of those two is more oppressed and which one of those two is more oppressive? A transgender model called a Muslim airport security staffer a terrorist after she mistakenly heard them call her a man. The security worker had actually said ma'am. Francesca Kamika, 23, shouted the comments during a 2-hour meltdown at London's Heathrow Airport while traveling to Italy for a breast augmentation. Kamika also got in the face of one officer and shouted, "This guy hates transgenders and wishes me dead. You're the terrorist." Kamika, who is identified as female on both her British and Italian passports, told the court, "When someone calls me man, I feel so desolated." She was convicted of using threatening behavior towards Mustafa Abbas and supervisor Fahad Arshad on September 17th and was conditionally discharged for 2 years. She was ordered to pay each victim £50 compensation and £750 costs. Mr. Abbas insisted that he addressed Kamika as ma'am during secondary security checks in busy Terminal 4. That's when the abuse began, he told the trial. She said, "Don't talk to me like a dog. You need to learn some education, you fucking idiot." She said it with disgust and was looking down at me and made me feel worthless, like I am nothing, as if I am a peasant. She said, "You earn £6 an hour and you think you are God." He reported the incident to supervisor Mr. Arshad, who told the court, "She refused to stop and completely lost control. Just mad, I couldn't speak to her. She completely lost the plot, saying that she was transgender and that I wished death on all transgenders. She was in a blind rage." I mean, considering the state of Islam right now, it's not an unreasonable thing to jump to conclusion to, but of course, she was still acting ridiculously. She pointed at my beard and said, "I should be afraid of you. You are the terrorist." She said I was homosexual and made an oral sex gesture with her hand. I have never come across anyone that angry or unpredictable in 7 years at Heathrow. I felt intimidated when she came close to my face and poked my shoulder with her fingers. She said, "You're peasants. I'll buy this fucking airport, this fucking plane." To be called a terrorist because of how I look is disgusting, and she lost control with the police as well. You think that she would understand that if she was somebody who was called a man because of how she looks, and she felt disgusted by it, as she should, then maybe she should also understand that to call a brown guy with a beard a terrorist because of how he looks is equally disgusting. The court heard Kamika also shouted, "I've been a woman for 20 years. So you had the surgery when you were 3 years old? To call me sir is a crime. I've got a diplomatic passport. You can't do anything to me. I know my rights." Kamika, who has a PhD in law, was upset there was no Jewish Torah on which to swear an oath. She told the court, "It's okay, my rights are breached every day." What a fucking snowflake. But let's switch back to biological cis women for a bit. Here's Polygon. Oh yeah, where did your ads go? I blocked them. Ninja explains his choice not to stream with female gamers. The only way to avoid the rumors is to not play with them at all. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ninja is the biggest streamer on Twitch right now. He streams mostly Fortnite. I think it's almost completely Fortnite. And he makes something like $250,000 a month on Twitch. He has, I think it's in the 6 digits regularly whenever he streams. Like, he is the biggest guy on Twitch right now. And I want it to be known before we read this article that he's married, all right? I don't think his wife streams with him, but he's married, he's monogamous, and that's I guess that's how he wants to keep things. So let's read this article. "I don't play with female gamers," says Tyler Ninja Blevins, Twitch's biggest streamer and one of the faces of the Fortnite fandom. This edict may be surprising to hear, especially as emphatically as Blevins said it when we spoke at a recent Samsung event. "If I have one conversation with one female streamer where we're playing with one another, and there's even a hint of flirting, that is going to be taken and going to be put on every single video and be clickbait forever." You know, that is actually true. I remember seeing 2 streamers, Eloise and Hafu. They're both Hearthstone streamers. They're both Chinese women. And they kind of played up the whole we're dating thing when they're not dating. They're both straight. But for a long time, people were saying, oh, they're lesbians together. You know, Twitch likes to do that. Fandoms like to do that. So if he's happily married and he wants to just kind of keep things private like that, keep his romantic life private, then yeah, you're going to avoid streaming with people whom a fandom might start spreading the rumor that you guys are dating or something, or like they might start shipping you, you know? He's going to avoid that, and it's reasonable to do so. Ninja said, not being connected to other women online, that was something I made 100% sure. It was his decision alone to keep his streaming partners men only. That was not even her. She had nothing to do with it. That was me being I love our relationship. And no, I'm not going to put you through that. A growing Twitch means a diminishing sense of privacy, especially for women on the platform. Female streamers have opened up before about the difficulty in maintaining a separation between their Twitch personas and who they are offline, often at the behest of viewers who demand answers lest they assume what's going on for themselves. So this article is, surprisingly from Polygon, a reasonably fair article, and it is just about how Ninja doesn't stream with women because he's married. He doesn't want the community to start spinning up rumors about him, and how maybe that's a bit discriminatory, but it's also reasonable on his end. But then we get this tweet thread from our good friend Nathan Grayson. Now, those of you who remember Nathan Grayson, he was one of the 5 guys from Gamergate, one of the guys who fucked Zoe Quinn. And while he was fucking her, he was also reporting on a game jam she was involved in and spinning her story in that report to be extremely positive when there's evidence that it might not have been. So that was the ethics in games journalism of Gamergate, by the way. But here's his take on it. Ninja's stance here is thorny as hell. While I get where he's coming from, this lends credence to the idea that women are different and should be treated as such. Well, it's his own personal opinion. Like, I assume that if his wife had a problem with it, his wife would let him know. I don't think it's your place to stick social justice into their fucking marriage. Part of the reason this sort of thing happens is that Twitch is dominated by dudes who play with other dudes. Ninja is more visible than anybody and could do a lot to change that perception if he so chose, but he'd have to really commit to it, and he doesn't seem to care enough. Well, his platform is not yours for you to promote your social ideas on, Nathan. Ninja has no obligation to use his platform to push any kind of social change. It's his show, not yours. And this is the absolute worst thing about hegemonic social justice, is that when you build an independent platform, like Ninja has, or like, you know, in the whole Comicsgate thing, when people started bypassing the SJWs in comics and they started directly crowdfunding the comics they wanted to see through Kickstarter or whatever, SJWs become fucking livid. They're like, oh, you've built a platform, you're influential. Well, now you have to push our politics. Now you have a moral obligation to push our politics because we are the ones who understand what morality is. And that really is the problem with the larger left. Like, this is obviously a story about video games, basically. But it's a problem with the larger left, that the left believe that they have a moral high ground, which they don't, but they believe they do. And they believe that moral high ground should give them access to every section of life, every large platform, every mode of influence. They say, because we are right, because we're right, we need to use every avenue to get our message out there. And even if they were completely right, which they're obviously not, but even if they were completely right, I don't think it follows. I don't think it logically follows at all that therefore they have the right to platforms they don't own. Ninja has no obligation to push this guy's brand of idiotic politics. And even if his politics were correct, he still has no obligation to push them. Alright, my friends, that does it for me. I'm going to turn this video recording off, and I'm immediately going to go record the Alex Jones video. I'm going to be in my my little office here for quite a while. I'll see you guys later. I love you.